The Intelligent Money British GT Championship is back. After an extended off-season, we are all delighted to be ready to go racing once again here at the magnificent Oulton Park International Circuit in the northwest of England, the traditional start venue for the championship. And although it's a bit later in the year, we are still hoping that it will produce the close quarters GT racing that it has become renowned for, and I think it probably will. We had the closest qualifying session in the championship's history yesterday in the AM element of qualifying, and that sets us up very nicely for two 60-minute races around the Parkland circuit, the first of which is just a few moments away. Well, those GT3 cars are pulling away from the line now onto their green flag lap, the first one of the season. The nerves will be starting to rise. Here is how they're lined up then. It's those four McLarens at the front. Optimum Motorsports' Lewis Proctor gets pole position by 1,000th of a second over Jordan Witt for 2C's Motorsport. His teammate Angus Fender is third, with James Baldwin, the world's fastest gamer, in fourth on the grid for Jenson Team Rocket RJN. Then it's Sam Dehan and Rob Collard, legendary driver of the British Touring Car Championship, switching to GTs for 2020. Mercedes and Lamborghini then on the third row of the grid. Then we've got Ian Loggy in the Pro-Am Ram Racing Mercedes, and then the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes of Richard Neary that he's sharing this year with his 18-year-old son, Sam, and they're both very, very quick drivers indeed. Adam Ballon, so near yet so far to the championship last year. He's got Phil Keane sharing that car again for Barwell. They're ninth on the grid, ahead of the Ferrari making a welcome return. AF Corsa UK's Duncan Cameron starts the car that Liam Griffin will take over at the pit stops. Outside of the top 10 then we have Michael Igoe for WPI Motorsport. That car I would say is out of position, so watch for them to move forward. Nick Jones in the Team Parker Racing Bentley is 12th on the grid, and then towards the back of the GT3 field in 13th position on the grid we should have the JMH Auto Lamborghini of John Seale, ahead of Conor O'Brien in the number 95 TF Sport Aston Martin that is on pole position in GT4. We're watching that car from on board with Sam Smelt in the Speedworks Motorsport Toyota. He starts second in GT4 alongside Patrick Mathieson for HHC Motorsport. Three different manufacturers in the top three positions. Then it's the second TF Aston of Daniel Vaughan, ahead of Jordan Albert for Academy Motorsport in the only Ford Mustang GT4 in the championship this year. Chippy Westmail, Chris Westmail makes the transition from sports prototypes to GTs. He's with HHC Motorsport's McLaren programme alongside Ben Hurst in the first of the two Century Motorsport BMWs. Then Mia Flewitt for Baldwin Motorsport in a McLaren, and David Whitmore in the second of those Century Motorsport BMWs, that the one running with the Tagiwa sponsorship this weekend. And then the field makes its way through, because that is the last row of the grid. Tension really starting to build now then, ahead of 60 minutes of racing action, a mandatory pit stop and driver change in the middle. We'll get into that in a bit more detail later on. And no pit stop penalties. This is the one race of the year where there are no success penalties, of course, because it's the first race of the year. This then, the one that sets the tone for the season to come. Out of Lodge Corner we go then, up and over Deer Leap. It's been a long wait, but the 2020 Intelligent Money British GT Championship is go! The lights go out, the run towards Old Hall Corner begins, and it's the Optimum Motorsport McLaren on the left-hand side of the road that holds on to pole position, slotting into second place. From the outside of row one goes Jordan Witt, so it's grid order for the top two or three. Some side-by-side action behind. Let's hope they all get through safely. Yes, they do. They make their way down the hill then, into Cascade. Still, it is Angus Fender and James Baldwin third and fourth. Look at how careful they're being, slightly cold tyres, and no one wants to bin the car halfway around the first lap of the season, and they're all very much minding their P's and Q's for the time being. Down the Lakeside Straight we go. GT4, it looks as though that is still much the same as it was, although a slowish start there for John Seale in the GT3 Lamborghini has actually put him behind the GT4 leader. That's playing nicely into the hands of Conor O'Brien in that Aston Martin. Well, Joe, clean start, that's the first thing on the checklist. Everyone being pretty careful, and we've kept that grid formation for the four McLarens at the front.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've called it right. Everyone wanted to keep clean. It's been such a long off-season. I think everyone's been going through in their head how they wanted the start to go, and it all kind of went like that. No one was trying to be a hero. Although a little boring, I think that will lead for a better race. You did call it right as well. I think that Michael Igoe will be on the front foot going forward. I believe that car had a suspension issue in qualifying, so I think he's probably going to be our mover and shaker in the GT3 grid. And what a phenomenal job by Conor O'Brien to overtake a GT3 car. I've never actually seen that before, and as we see that, So Connor's actually now got a huge gap to second place, so he needs how to deal with how John SEALE overtakes him to not lose too much time. And he is absolutely laughing in that GT4. He probably already has a 2-second gap, so that will be interesting to see how that sort of transforms that battle.
First lap then is in the books, and Lewis Proctor leads the way for Optimum Motorsport by just under 7/10 of a second from Jordan Witt in second. There is Nick Jones in the Team Parker Racing Bentley Continental GT3. He's down in 11th place with Michael Igoe right behind him. That Lamborghini looked really strong yesterday. Shame they had that problem in qualifying that put them down the grid. But as Joe was saying, they should make progress. We've seen the change there between John SEALE and our GT4 leader, Conor O'Brien. Sam Smelt is still second, and it's still third for Patrick Mathieson. So grid order in GT4. Then, though, the first of the changes, the Academy Motorsport Ford Mustang being started in this race by Jordan Albert, has got himself up ahead of the second of the TF Sport Aston Martins. The Ford Mustang, which went well here last year, remember, in the hands of the Multimatic squad, going well again for Academy Motorsport in 2020. GT3 of the 3 field then starting to make its way over Hilltop again. And this is when we start to see now, Joe, this fascinating dynamic between the Silver Cup entrants and the Pro-Am cars. It's crucial for those Silver Cup McLarens, particularly at the front of the field, to build a gap now, because in theory, through the second half of the race, that gap might get eroded by the pros.
Yeah, exactly. They need to build the foundation for the race result in this one now. So whatever gap they can hand over to their teammate, who will be up against the pros in those Pro-Am element cars, is so beneficial. And interestingly, the sort of crossover of that Silver to Pro-Am is here with the first lot of the Mercedes, and they are also teammates. So you've got Dehan in front of Loggy, who is then in front of Neary. And interestingly, Neary is actually running the old spec Mercedes, so it's not the Evo. So for you anoraks out there, you'll be able to spot the difference on the front grille. It doesn't have the facelift on it. And then to add a bit of spice to that, Neary and Loggy have some good history around here from a few years back, and it's not a friendly history to say the least. So that Mercedes battle could get pretty interesting as well. We saw Nick Jones there just running a little bit wide out of Old Hall. You can see the concrete on the exit of the corners in a few of the parts of the track, and it looks strange that the cars aren't using it, because it looks very tempting and it would be faster, but under MSA law that would be illegal. So as soon as any tyre leaves the circuit or the curb, that is track limits. So they basically got 3 attempts, and then it's drive-through time. So there we see Igoe on Jones at Shell. It's probably the best overtaking spot in a GT3 car, as it's one of the highest speeds to the lowest speed, so the brake zone's the biggest, so you've got the longest time to get the overtake done in essence.
Nose to tail now, though, for the race lead. Look at this. I don't know whether traffic came into play, but the 2Cs Motorsport McLaren of Jordan Witt is right underneath the rear wing of the Optimum Motorsport McLaren of Lewis Proctor. Game on now then, 38 minutes near enough still to go. We're still just under 10 minutes away from the pit lane window opening, and we have the top 2 cars in GT3 absolutely together, Proctor to Witt. So Witt, he's gained that big chunk of time in the traffic, and that now, in his mind, that tells him, hey, I can do this, I can have this guy, and he's going to try and do it into Lodge Corner. Can't quite get up the inside there into the final turn, and it's one of the better overtaking opportunities. They're both squirrely on the exit of the corner, over the hill, and in fact, the pit lane window is now open, I beg your pardon. So into the pits comes Lewis Proctor. Sensible decision that. I think he was starting to come under pressure, starting to drive defensively, starting to make some mistakes. Better to get him in, get him out of the car, and reset for the second stint. Finally, in now comes the race leader. So Jordan Witt then in the number 10 car, ready to hand over to Jack Mitchell. Out gets Jordan, Jack assisting him as much as he can there with the driver change. And this is critical. He's had 2 extra laps in completely clean air compared to this car, the orange machine, number 96 of Ollie Wilkinson. Wilkinson also now in traffic. So in the next 30 seconds or so, we'll see who's got the lead, and this is not working out at all well here. He's got stuck behind and still can't really get past the 33 BMW of David Whitmore, the all-AM entry in GT4, remember. All of this time lost, and the fact that the 2C's car had that clean air, might that just be enough to allow Optimum through into the race lead? We'll find out shortly, because he's heading into Lodge Corner. The number 10 car is back on its way, though, so this is going to be very tight. It's quite a long way down the pit lane. Out of Lodge Corner comes Wilkinson. He's got the Balf Motorsport car of Mia FLEWITT to put a lap on. There goes the 2C's car. This is going to be very tight. Off it goes. It's got the tighter line, but it's got to get up to speed in the pit lane exit. It gets out just in front, but remember, the Optimum car, that driver is up to speed. He's had a couple of laps already. ready. Ollie Wilkinson has full temperature and pressure back in the tyres. Now is the time to attack, but actually, not quite close enough.
Yeah, the 2C's car has also gone for new tyres, so Mitchell has a brand new set of Pirellis on, which for the first few laps is probably half a second to a second faster, so he is going to get that. The only thing I would add is that the 2C's going down the pit lane, the number 10 car, was very slow at the end, which normally indicates he is close to his pit lane time. So the car will have a timer in with a delta saying if you're below or above. And obviously if you're below and you're going to get a penalty, you need to ease off. So if he's not eased off enough and he's gone under the time, he will get a stop-go penalty for the amount of time he was under, which isn't the problem, but the coming in and out of the pit lane is going to be 15, 16 seconds.
Through we go then, 30 laps have been completed. We've got just over 10 minutes still to go in round number 1 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. Michael O'Brien has a 1.7 second cushion over Ollie Wilkinson in their pair of McLarens out in front. The real battle is the one going on for third. That's what we're focusing on now. Dean McDonald, Sandy Mitchell, Patrick Kuyala and Yelmer Berman. And Kuyala again there running wide out of Cascades Corner. I haven't seen any warnings for him though, so maybe, oh no, that's off. Off goes Matt Cowley. Interrupt myself there from a third position in GT4. That's a real shame for Academy Motorsport. They were on for a good result and it benefits James Kell, who gets himself back up 1 position now. The Mustang though has gone grass tracking and, well, Joe, that's an easy mistake to make and actually usually more costly than that because that barrier tends to come up quite quickly. Yeah,
luckily the grass is dry up here, so it stopped him pretty quickly, but you can see how far he went and that gives you an appreciation of the speed exactly they've got there. Hopefully he can get going again, one for his own sake and get back into the race, but otherwise that would most probably have to be a safety car to recover that car, which would definitely spice things up, so fingers crossed maybe there is one.
Well, indeed, although we only have 9 minutes left on the clock. The race has flown by, and so a safety car now would take us quite close to the end of the race. And actually, things are hotting up quite nicely all on their own, aren't they? Because Sandy Mitchell has dropped back again now from Dean McDonald into the clutches of Kuyala behind. And we're on board now with the Mercedes that was started by Sam Tahan. But that Patrick has now taken over, climbs over Deer Leap in towards turn 1. There's some traffic in front of them. That's the 58 HHC McLaren of Jordan Collard running second in GT4, and they're going to catch him down towards Cascades.
And there's a yellow flag out there. So safety car.
Oh dear, well, you were right again, Joe. That's twice today. You're on a roll. Out comes the safety car, and well, there are winners and losers anytime the safety car comes out. The big loser, really, Michael O'Brien, because you mentioned it a lap or so ago. He was matching Ollie Wilkinson pretty much 10th for 10th. The gap was sat at about 1.7, 1.8 seconds. It will now be absolutely nothing, and he's going to have some defensive work to do as and when the race gets back underway. Well, that is a real shame for Academy Motorsport. It's always tricky, that, isn't it, when you have a change of car, not only for the drivers, but for the team as well. Each car requires a slightly different setup and a slightly different way of working around it, and they've done a really good job to get onto terms with this Ford Mustang, who was in a podium place. A shame that they're not even going to finish the race now. Yeah,
I just hope they can get the car repaired for the second race. Doesn't look like there's any major damage on it, so like I said, hopefully it's just a software issue and it just needs a laptop plugged in.
Green flag. The safety car snuck in without us realising, so I think they're going to leave the car where it is, which is interesting, but the race will resume and they'll have time maybe for 2 more laps. Yes, they should have 2 more laps to go, so that caught us off guard because we'd just seen the Ford Mustang still on the grass, but they've clearly decided it's in a safe enough position and the race can carry on. So a 2-lap dash for the cash.
Red flag. I can see on a Marshall ball, I can see a red flag, but still green everywhere, sorry.
No, that's all right. Red flag, it would have made some sense maybe, but anyway, we are still green. The race is continuing, and that means these battles for podium positions can continue, although Michael O'Brien, he was on his toes. He didn't get caught out by the safety car coming in because he has already built up a nice little cushion. That's probably about a second or so between himself and Wilkinson, who instead is having to watch his mirrors to keep McDonald and Mitchell at bay.
Yeah, I think Mikey was mega on that. He's got the jump and he's almost reinstalled the gap that he had before. And Sandy's done a really good job in that Lamborghini because he had the GT4 McLaren between him and McDonald, and obviously there's not McLaren GT4 gap there, so that's how much he's closed up on this lap. And it is going to be this final lap that we're about to go on to see if anyone can to make any moves, and it kind of actually looks like it's evened itself back out again. There's no one closer or further away than they were before the safety car, unfortunately.
Yes, well, possibly because they were all so close together anyway, but yeah, you're right. This looks almost exactly the same as it was about 10 or 15 minutes ago, but yeah, the final lap then will now begin, and Michael O'Brien looks good for the race victory here in the McLaren, but which McLaren is going to finish in second position? That might be the real question. These three McLarens, remember, all run out of three different teams. They're all Silver Cup entrants, and they all want to try and finish as high up the order as they can in this first race. Worth remembering, though, that the podium finishers in both classes for this race will have to spend extra time in the pit lane in race 2, so maybe that might come into play as well here. If you were Dean McDonald sat in third place, how big a risk are you willing to take here to take second place away from Wilkinson, knowing that A, it could go horribly wrong anyway, and B, even if it does, you're gaining relatively few points, but several seconds onto your pit stop in race 2.
Yeah, mentality-wise, start of the season versus end of the season is very different. So, yeah, you need to be 100% sure that the move's nailed on, I think, in this instance. And just quite look like there's a big enough speed difference between the cars for that to happen. I think Kajala's done really well in this car pace-wise, and I think in race 2, with obviously the pros of doing their qualifying there, be starting near the front. We're going to see this in reverse, in effect, that the pros will be in front of the silver cars, and their job is then to get away. The interesting bit will then be the AMPs trying to defend from the silvers, of which there will be a much, much bigger speed difference.
Yeah, those two Mercedes will share the second row, actually, for that second race behind the two Barwell Lamborghinis, so it's going to be a real changing of the guard at the front of the field. For now, though, it is McLaren's time to shine, and in particular, it is the time for Jenson Team Rocket RJN to start celebrating, because it is going to be a race victory in round number 1 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. Across the line they go, and Michael O'Brien brings it home. James Baldwin wins the world's fastest gamer in his first ever race in the championship. Ollie Wilkinson brings the Optimum car home in second, and Dean McDonald hangs on to third. In GT4, it's going to be pretty plain sailing, I think, not for this TF Sport car, but for the other one. Number 95, Patrick Kibble, has crossed the line already, has he? No, hang on.
He's actually a lap ahead of the way the safety car works, so he just needs to finish this, so he was granted it.
Got you. I'm glad you're awake, Joe. So yes, through comes the 95 car. Patrick Kibble now does win the race, but you're right, because of the safety car there, it trapped everyone else a lap behind him. So a very easy final couple of laps there for Patrick Kibble. Jordan Collard second for HHC, and Jamie Caroline third. So both of the TF Sport Aston Martins are on the podium. But Joe, I really can't say enough positive things about this Jenson Team Rocket RJN squad. They were a late addition to the championship anyway, as you alluded to earlier on. Their plan was to race in Europe. That couldn't happen. Here they are in British GT, and they're straight on the pace. James Baldwin, super impressive there in his first stint in the championship, and Michael O'Brien did well to bring it home. They win the race then. Second place for Wilkinson and Proctor for Optimum. Angus Fender and Dean McDonald are third. 3 different McLarens from 3 different teams, all on the podium. Rob Collard and Sandy Mitchell come home fourth, ahead of Patrick Kiyala and Sam Dahan in 5th. And then the first Pro-Am car of Yelmer Berman and Ian Loggy. Bit surprised they didn't make more progress there. Adam Ballon and Phil Keener second in Pro-Am, 7th overall, ahead of Sam Neary and Richard Neary, 3rd in Pro-Am, 8th place outright. Then it was Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron for AF Corsa. Scott Malvern and Nick Jones in the Team Parker Racing Bentley rounding out the top 10. And then Michael Igoe and Dennis Lind ahead of Jack Mitchell and Jordan Witt after their 2 pit stop penalties, ending up in 12th for 2C's Motorsport. Marcus Clutton and John Seale in the JMH Auto Lamborghini rounds out the GT3 field. Then TF Sport victorious in GT4 ahead of HHC, with the second of the TF Sport cars coming home in 3rd. Then it was Sam Smelt and James Kell, 4th place. Not a bad recovery after the pit stop penalty, but a case of what could have been there. They were running second at the time. Chippy Westermail does well as well there with Gus Bowers to get into the top 5 for HHC.
Round 1, race 1, James from Gamer to the real thing. That was absolutely terrific. How did it feel?
I can't believe it. Like, first race winning, like, wasn't on part of the script. When we got to the track on Friday, me and Michael, to be fair, we both have a lack of experience in GT3s. I think we said before we have a combined experience of 25 laps in the car. There's got to be some sort of record of the least experienced duo to ever go in British GT. But yeah, I didn't think when I came in we'd win the race, to be honest. We were fourth. But it's just like testament to patience is key in GT racing. Everyone kept on drilling it into me all weekend, and now I finally believe them. So yeah.
Well, Michael, you are inexperienced in GT3, but GT4 is obviously your stomping ground. Your steps up this year.
Yeah.
What a great way to say to your team boss, Jenson Button.
Yeah.
How's that for you, round one, race one?
Yeah, unbelievable, Kelvin, to be honest. I obviously had some great battles with you last year in the GT4 for the championship, and to get this relatively late call up to GT3 first of all was incredible, and then obviously to represent Jenson and the team like that in the first race has been well, couldn't believe it, to be honest.
Well,
I can't believe it.
Boys. I thought you did a great job today, and my old team as well, RJN, should I say. So great work today. Well done, guys.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you.
Well, that was our GT3 race-winning team. In GT4, it was the familiar sight, though, of a TF Sport Aston Martin on top, and down there with Kelvin Fletcher now are our GT4 winners.
Patrick, from Paul to the race win, that was a pretty good stint.
I was very happy with the second stint. I mean, kind of did a fantastic job to get that huge gap, so I just pretty much had the easy job of just putting the laps in and keeping clear of everyone else, really.
And how was the Aston holding off in your stint there? Obviously the tyres were going off a little bit towards the end.
Yeah, it was going off, but TF gave us a really good car. I think it's more nervous being out of the car watching than it is in it.
Well done, guys.
Thank you, cheers.
Great, guys.
Thank you, Calvin. Well, there you go then. Our first race of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship sees a brand new winner in the series. More of the same, hopefully, later on today. A completely different look to the grid, though, and it should be a cracking 60 minutes of racing. That one is due to start at about 4:45 local time. You don't want to miss it. The Intelligent Money British GT Championship off to a fantastic start. Already, we are looking forward to what the rest of the day, and indeed the rest of the season, has in store for us. Welcome back to Oulton Park for round number 2 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship, the Oulton Park circuit in Cheshire, the traditional host venue of our first 2 races, the 2 60-minute encounters to kick off the season. We've already had one. That was a very, very entertaining race that saw a first-time victory in GT3 for the Jenson Team Rocket RJN squad of James Baldwin and Michael O'Brien, and they only just held on at the front. It was a McLaren 1-2-3, but race number 2 has a rather different look to the grid. It was McLarens that locked out the front of the field for race 1, but very much Lamborghinis to the fore, with the 2 Baldwin Motorsport cars sharing the front row. Phil Keane and Sandy Mitchell will be the 2 drivers leading the field to the green flag in just a few minutes' time. You can see the grid being prepared. The cars are lined up in the pit lane, and what a splendid sight they make. And the drivers are, I'm sure, starting to feel the nerves again ahead of this second 60-minute race. So race 1 dominated by McLarens. Race 2, though, will have a very different feel. The pro drivers starting in the Pro-Am cars, with the Silver Cup entrance, of course. That means that this first part of the race is when they may struggle, but they'll then hope to come back into it in the second half. But what we saw in race 1 is that the teams that got the track position by the midway point were by and large able to keep hold of it through the second half of the race. Will that be the case again, though, in race number 2? Let's find out. Phil Keane and Sandy Mitchell on the front row of the grid, looking back at the 2 Ram Racing Mercedes behind of Yelmer Berman and Patrick Kujala. So, side by side, over Deers Leap in the sunshine at Oulton Park. Round number 2 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship gets underway. Who makes a good start? It's going to be Kujala from the outside of row number 2, who tries to go to the outside, then goes to the inside, and look at Marcus Clutton on the inside in the green. Lamborghini goes third, surely not, gets stuck behind the number 72 of Phil Keane, and Kujala comes back in, then back wheels down the avenue. That's so close to disaster. Phil Keane leads the way, Sandy Mitchell second, Kujala side by side with Clutton, who goes round the outside through Cascades. Fantastic start from the local man. He's a race instructor here at Oulton Park. He knows every inch of this place, and he's used that to good effect on lap 1. Up the inside goes Yelmer Berman as well, back into 4th place ahead of Kujala. Well, that, Joe Osborne, was a lot more feisty than the start of race 1. Brilliant stuff there from Marcus Clutton.
What a boy. What
no.
We saw that car going slow round Island Bend, so Mikey O'Brien's had a problem there. Looks like he's rejoined without too much more issue, but that was so aggressive on the two Mercedes. He literally went to him, I'm putting my car in. If you're going to turn in, it's your fault now. And carried on all the way down the avenue to Cascades to do it on Kajala. And that was honestly, that's the best start I've seen from a British GT3 car in the last decade.
That was incredible. Marcus Clutton, if you hadn't heard of him before, I think you're all well aware of why those who spent a lot of time here at Oulton Park sing his praises. Brilliant stuff. So Clutton then into third. It's a Lamborghini 1-2-3 with the two Mercedes having now, well, they're back in grid order, even though the best of the starters between the Ram cars was Patrick Kajala in the 69 car, but it is Jelmer Berman in the green and black number 6 car that he'll share with Ian Loggy in this race that is into 4th place. Everyone down into Lodge then at the end of the first lap. A shame to see the number 2 car in trouble. Hopefully Michael O'Brien's got no damage in the car that won the first race, but with a pit stop penalty to serve later on, as well as a success penalty by virtue of him winning the previous race. His race is not looking great, nor though is the race for the number 8 car, Richard and Sam Neary. It's Sam that started the race, the son of Richard, and he's had a spin sadly coming out of Lodge corner. Quite easy to do that in cold tyres, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, especially with a bit of exit curb, a bit dusty, can easily loop around. GT3s have probably settled down a little bit. I think GT4s, by the looks of it, Caroline has got in front of Hankey at the start, so maybe benefited from everything that was kicking off in front. And actually we see Neary pit as well, so maybe it was a little bit more of a problem, just a simple spin. But Keen out front, we'll say that a few times over the season, I'm sure. But yeah, to have a Lamborghini 1-2-3 after a McLaren 1-2-3-4 in the race, it's interesting how a manufacturer suddenly gets a bit of a break and they all kind of group together.
The difference in this race is that whereas in race 1 the top 6 cars at this stage were all Silver Cup entrants, here there's a mix. You've got the Pro-Am car, so the pro driver of Phil Keen leading, but then Sandy Mitchell as a silver driver. I know we're only a lap and a half into the race, but he's doing a good job so far. He's fallen back a bit from Phil Keen, but not right into the clutches of the pro drivers of Marcus Clutton and Jelmer Berman behind. So there's a real mix of experience and speed at the front of the field this time around, which should hopefully provide a little bit more overtaking than we saw in the early stages of race 1. In fact, Clutton is not attacking Sandy Mitchell. Instead, he's defending in the JMH Autos Lamborghini from Jelmer Berman. Jelmer Berman had a second place finish here a couple of years ago in the wet, was chasing down Phil Keen actually in the final stint of that race. Didn't quite manage to get there in time, but Jelmer Berman looks a bit quicker than the Lamborghini. Two very different cars here as well. You've got the mid-engine Lamborghini, the big front-engine Mercedes. Where do you think, taking that into account, Jelmer might have a chance to get through?
So the Mercedes is super strong aerodynamics-wise, so the higher speed corner will be stronger than the Lamborghini. So here through Island is very quick into a big brake zone, but Clutton, as you said as an instructor, he knows all the tricks of the trade round here. So I honestly don't see Berman getting past him for the whole stint. And the interesting bit is obviously Clutton's teammate John SEALE was a bit off the pace, so he was the slowest in the AM qualifying. So then it's going to be an interesting dynamic when Berman hands over to Loggy and when Kajala hands over to Han. There's going to be a bit of a cork in the bottle, I feel, in this mid-pack.
Yes, well, right now, Jelmer Berman is forcing Marcus Clutton to drive defensively, so you've almost got that cork in the bottle effect now, not because Marcus Clutton is slow, but because he's not able to go as quickly as he could if he wasn't having to watch his mirrors so much. There is Ollie Wilkinson, 8th place for the Optimum Motorsport McLaren that ran inside the top 3 all race long, really, in race number 1. But the real battle is this one behind the Lamborghini of Clutton. You've got Clutton, Berman, Kajala, Jack Mitchell, then Griffin, Matt Griffin in the 51 Ferrari there, ahead of Ollie Wilkinson and Dean McDonald. Dennis Lynn down in 10th position.
From the onboard at the moment, just trying to see if Matt can gain on him through Druids. Looks like pretty even, to be honest, and yeah, he's just going to be sat in that aero wake of the McLaren, so it's going to be hard for him to get much closer. Car looked quite leery on the brakes there over the first bump into Lodge. Good traction, you can see on the dash all the lights, the rev lights, the gear number as we pan back to 3rd place. And Clutton's just doing his job. He knows the circuit so well, as I said, and I really don't think Berman will be able to do much about that, to be honest. As we see the BMW, you can get a good appreciation of the speed difference actually when you pan from class to class, and feels a lot in the car, but also looks a lot externally, as we see Dennis Lind is now starting to ramp up the pressure on McDonald.
Yeah, both of those 2C Motorsport cars seem to have lost pace pretty much at the same time, so that's interesting. Maybe some setup tweaks to be made there for long run pace. There's the leader, Phil Keane. Haven't seen much of him, but he and Sandy Mitchell are still less than 2 seconds apart, and they are now heading through past the leaders in the GT4 category. Phil Keane's got 3 more GT4 cars to get past, the first of which is going to be the TF Sport car just ahead of him, look, of Jordan Collard, excuse me. No, Patrick Kimmel was right the first time, and so as they turn through the right-hander at Druids, just definitely losing time there, Phil Keane, and Sandy Mitchell will have gained a 10th or so out of all of that, but he makes the move stick on the run underneath the Paul Warwick Bridge into Lodge Corner, and Sandy Mitchell is going to gain here again, I think, because he's going to catch that Aston Martin across the start-finish straight. He may even get past Ewan Hankey before they get to Old Hall Corner. Phil Keane has no. Sandy Mitchell won't quite get there, but the gap did come down by about half a second that time. So Sandy Mitchell taking advantage of the lap traffic. He's going to catch Ewan Hankey down the straight, and that's exactly what we were talking about in race 1. He didn't quite know which way Ewan Hankey was going to go. He expected him to stay left, and he didn't. He went right, and that almost caught him out. Yeah,
you can see GT4s are trying to go around their own business, and you do find the better GT4 cars, the driver's got time to put an indicator on, so it looks like they've knocked it by mistake, but they're just trying to signal, obviously, which side they're staying to help everyone, and the GT4s can save a lot of time themselves by managing the traffic better. So at the moment, we're not really losing too much time. It's really when you get a cluster of GT4 cars that you can suddenly bleed 2 or 3 seconds out of a lap. But I'd say Sandy's had the rub of the green so far in terms of it, and the gap's back down to 1.3 seconds. And it's actually now grown to 11.5 back to this car. Clotton, big hit on the curb. Again, that damping of the Lamborghini looks like it doesn't like a big sudden input. So on the dampers, you've got 4 sites of adjustment, which maybe I shouldn't get into because I don't really understand, but you've got slow speed and high speed, compression and rebound, so you can really change so much of it. And again, you can see that happening with the Ferrari. So he's got a rear left suspension, I would say, by the looks of it, or rear right. You can see his left hand is quite a lot down on the steering wheel to go straight. He's on the radio to the team, so for me that's a rear suspension, a toe link, for example, and that might have just been a curb strike. Let's get a replay. So the Ferrari with the white bonnet in the background going down the inside, either contact with the Toyota. So it was that. So front right to rear left, and it looks like they make them strong in Tokyo. I don't quite know where the Toyota's made, but that Maranello Ferrari definitely has come off worse. And unfortunately, that will be race over for them. That will be a 30-minute job to repair. So with only 40 minutes remaining, there will be no point for that.
James Baldwin, though, comes out right in front of Marcus Clutton and Patrick Kujala, who've been out there for nearly half an hour now. They're fully up to speed, and this is another area where maybe James might just take a lap or so longer to get up to speed as someone who is new to real-world racing. Massively successful already in sim racing. He won in his debut in the championship, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he has got all of the tools in his racing driver toolbox just yet. That takes a bit of experience, but he's back out in front of Kujala now. 10-second penalty, by the way, for James Kell in the Toyota, the Speedworks Toyota and GT4, for causing a collision. Not sure what collision he caused, but he's clearly
been with Matt Griffin at the chicane.
Yes, you're right. So that, well, that sounds a bit harsh to me. What do you think?
Yeah, pretty punchy, I think. I thought it was racing incident E. Matt was down the inside. Not Matt's fault at all, but I don't know. It seems I would have liked an investigation after the race. As a driver, it's always nice to put your view across, try and have a bit of a case, and then when you get told you get a penalty, then you can just go home anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, I'm sure Peter Daly, the clerk of the course, has got his reasons, and they, of course, have a lot more data and information that they can use to come to an informed decision than we do. But there you go. So the Toyota, unfortunately, another race of what could have been, really, for them. But they'll bounce back next time out at Donington Park, I'm sure. So nearly halfway through the race then, and definitely no real urgency here for the Pro-Am cars to pit, as you'd expect. I'm surprised in a way at how long they're leaving Sandy Mitchell out there, though, compared to the other pro drivers around. It's same for Kujala. They're the last 2 Silver Cup cars that have not pitted yet, but then they both had really good pace anyway, so I suppose there's no need to bring them in earlier. But do you think that maybe they could have gained if they brought them in a couple of laps before the Pro-Ams?
Both top teams in Baldwin and Ram, so they have strategists, and their job is to, funny enough, come up with the strategy. And they would have worked out the delta difference between Kajala, Dahan, and Mitchell and Collard, and they would have worked out that they're quicker over a lap, so it's worth keeping them in as long as possible, like we're seeing with Keane and Berman. The gold versus bronze is a really obvious one, but sometimes the silver wasn't. So maybe this is more contact. What we're looking at, Keane just kind of avoiding a very gentle accident that the Toyota was having. So yeah, Keane would have been looking ahead, would have seen that. I don't think that would have been too worrying for him.
Right, here comes Adam Ballon out of the pit lane. Out of Lodge goes Rob Collard. So you were right, that was only about 3 or so seconds between them beforehand. I reckon it's gone up slightly, but it should now start coming down. So that car there, second place now in the race once again, with Rob Collard at the wheel, chasing down his teammate Adam Ballon. But Ballon is a bronze driver and Rob Collard is a silver. He should be quicker, and he's got 26.5 minutes left to try and catch him. Ian Logie has come through in third place for Ram Racing, and I'm waiting to see who will be in fourth. I think it's going to be, Sam Dahan ahead of Jordan Witt. So Dahan fourth, Witt fifth, and the 55 car slipping down the field now as we kind of expected. So that sets the scene then, and I think we are in for a pretty tasty second half of this race.
Yeah, definitely. I think the only thing of interest there is the Barwell guys pushed that car back quite early, and it sat in the pit lane before it's driven off. And the definition of the rule, which I do like reading.
Oh,
wow.
Which one's that? Is that 95? It is. That's the 95 Aston Martin off down at Cascades. Conor O'Brien, who's only just taken out that car. In fact, this is his out lap, and he's off in a big way.
First. Yeah, that is interesting to say the least. And that's the Bentley, but that's nowhere near on the circuit. That looks like it's going into the second chicane at Knickerbrook to me. But I think we're going to get a safety car for 2 separate incidents. I can't quite see how they're linked yet as a conspiracy theory, but oh my God.
What is going on? That's Angus Fender now in the number 9 car, so 3
and
cars.
That's at Shell, so we've got 3 different sectors now under yellow. Unless there's oil down, which I can't see. I mean, the O'Brien car had a lot coming off it, so I'd expect some oil and debris to be at Cascades, but the car looks all right there. To me, the Bentley looked like it had rear damage, the way it was sat down. Yeah, going to need a bit of time to decipher this one. Got the yellow flags out, can't see the safety car board just yet.
I think there is one just opposite us, but they've not yet told the teams on the timing screen. Pit stop still going on as well, so this could also come into play because the GT4 pit window has not closed yet. So in now comes the surviving TF car, everyone diving for the pit lane in case we get a safety car, which we do. The safety car has now been scrambled. There is every chance, bear in mind most of the GT4 cars lose a lap with a pit stop, because they have that 14 seconds, certainly for the Silver Cup cars. This could really jumble up the GT4 order, so everyone scratching their heads, A, to try and work out what on earth's gone on out there, because suddenly people have started dropping like flies, and B, to try and work out what the long-term implications for the race this might have, but it is certainly going to have an effect on the GT4 category. So
not front-end damage, but the car's gone off around that little kink down the avenue. So let's get the replay lined up and let's try and decipher what's happened. So car on his inside.
And that's the Bentley.
And that is the Bentley. So the Bentley's gone down the inside, there's been contact. So the Bentley then, wow, that McLaren's done well. So then I think the McLaren's been hit by a wheel. Looked like it was a wheel bouncing along. So the conspiracy is the Bentley and the Aston have come together. The Bentley's then taken the old Foster's circuit and ended up at Knickerbrook 8 corners later. The Aston's laid to rest there. And I think the McLaren has got some legacy damage from the Aston Martin wheel hitting it.
So it is a safety car finish to our second round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship, but it is still a superb performance for Barwell Motorsport as Phil Keane and Adam Ballon win round number 2 of the championship. Rob Collard and Sandy Mitchell come home in second position. Sam Dahan and Patrick Kajala will inherit third because Ian Logie, I think they've applied a time penalty rather than giving him the stop-go in the end, so he drops right down the order. Jordan Witt brings the 2Cs Motorsport, the surviving 2Cs Motorsport car home in fourth. The car that he shares with Jack Mitchell and Michael Igo and Dennis Lind rounding out the top 5. 6th place for Lewis Proctor in the 96 Optimum Motorsport Aston Martin that he shares with Ollie Wilkinson, and then James Baldwin, the Race 1 winner with Michael O'Brien. They finish in 7th place. In GT4, it is going to be Mia FLEWITT and Ewan Hankey that take the win. Dan Vaughan and Jamie Caroline get themselves 2nd place in GT4 for TF Sport, and 3rd for Patrick Mathieson and the number 58 of Jordan Collard that they share. Well, let's confirm then, shall we, the result of round number 2 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. Adam Ballon and Phil Keane lead a Barwell Motorsport 1-2. And they also win the Pro-Am category as well, of course. Rob Collard and Sandy Mitchell in 2nd win the Silver Cup, with Patrick Kujala and Sam Dahan 3rd place. Jack Mitchell and Jordan Witt are 4th. Michael Igo and Dennis Lynn for WPI Motorsport in 5th position, ahead of Ollie Wilkinson and Lewis Proctor in the Optimum Aston Martin. And it's James Baldwin and Michael O'Brien in 7th. Marcus Clutton and John Seale end up 8th. That's not a bad result for them. Whilst Yelmer Berman and Ian Loggy are demoted by 30 seconds by the looks of it, in lieu of the stop-go penalty. Then in GT4, Mia FLEWITT and Ewan Hankey take the victory. Again, a Pro-Am car comes out on top this time, ahead of Dan Vaughan and Jamie Caroline, who get themselves a pair of podiums. And I reckon the championship lead in GT4, they also win the Silver Cup. Patrick Mathieson and Jordan Collard are 3rd, ahead of Ben Hurst and Andrew Gordon-Colebrook, 4th for Century. Chippy Wessamale and Gus Bowers for HHC round out the top 5, ahead of David Whitmore and Luke Sedgwickowski in the 2nd of the Century BMWs in 15th. And I think the only other finisher in the end, albeit a lap behind the other GT4 cars, was the 61 Academy Motorsport car, Ford Mustang of Jordan Albert and Matt Cowley. And there you can see him, and then everybody else, unfortunately, failed to make the end. Scott Malvern and Nick Jones, Angus Fender and Dean McDonald, and Patrick Kibble and Conor O'Brien, all involved in that spectacular accident down at Cascades. All drivers are okay though. So race number 2 is in the books then. We've got the championship off to a start now, and Barwell Motorsport, I think, will be pretty happy on balance with the way that their day has gone, especially Adam Ballon, who's a winner once again in the championship, and he is down in Parc Ferme celebrating with Kelvin.
Well, I'm here with Phil and Adam. Phil, firstly, great stint from you. How good does it feel to be leaving Oulton Park with a win? Obviously, a championship is not won in the first round, but these lump of points here is going to be good for the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, the plan was actually not to score too many points here and wait till the end of the year, because normally when we do well at Oulton, we don't do too well at the end of the year. So, but you know, we need to take the points when we can. Adam, we've had a challenging weekend, and Adam's driven well all weekend. It's just a shame he couldn't race at the end.
Adam, as I said before, I know firsthand what a great driver you are. Now, on paper, you had Rob Collard behind you, who was about to be breathing down your neck. Yeah. And the guys in the commentary box were saying, obviously, as a silver driver, you're obviously a bronze driver. On paper, he should be in a position to attack and overtake you. But I was fighting your corner, and I was quietly confident that even with that assault from Rob, that you could hold him off and, you know, show your worth, albeit as a bronze driver, and bring it home. You didn't need to do that, but I'm sure, would you have been confident should that have played out like that?
Yeah, I would have given it a damn good shot. And you know what, around here it's tough to overtake, and if I can get into my groove, then I think I would have been able to hold him off. But we'll never know. It's a shame. Well
done anyway, guys. Well deserved, and a great end to Oulton Park. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Kelvin. Well, in GT3, it was a Lamborghini 1-2. In GT4, though, it was a McLaren on top, and it was the Balf Motorsport car of Ewan Hankey and Mia FLEWITT. They're down with Kelvin.
Ewan, that was action-packed last 20-30% of that race. How did it feel?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for myself, my start wasn't brilliant. The 97 had a little bit better, and then I just had to hold on to him as much as I could. I knew we would have had a bit of a pit stop advantage with the time penalty that they had. So I was confident that Mia would have every chance of holding on. And when the safety car came out, I was then worried for her, thinking that all the advantage that we'd built up might have been negated. But thankfully, you know, it ended the way it did, and we'll take our first Pro-Am win together, which is awesome. And yeah, I couldn't be happier.
So that is all we've got time for here from Oulton Park. That's all of the racing. It's been a busy day, lots of action crammed into a relatively short space of time, which it goes really for the rest of the 2020 season. We will be back in just 2 weeks from Donington Park with the 2-race format that we'll have there, a 1-hour race in the morning, a 2-hour race in the afternoon. That is going to be another great day of action. We'll see the championship continue to twist and turn as the season goes on. My thanks to Joe Osborne for joining me up here in the comms box. Best of luck from all of us for Donington Park in a couple of weeks' time. I'm sure you can't wait to get out there and enjoy the racing again. And of course, a huge thanks as well to our presenter, Kelvin Fletcher, who I think has done a pretty good job all round today. And it's great to have him on board in the team, we hope, for the rest of the year. Thank you everyone for joining us here with the live coverage of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. It's great to have you all back. We couldn't do it though without the hard work from everyone behind the scenes. SRO have done a magnificent job of allowing us to go back racing again. Motorsport Vision as well, who own the Oulton Park circuit, have been working hard behind the scenes to ensure that they can have spectators here this weekend. Of course, all of the hard-working marshals as well. That's it then from Oulton Park. We'll be back with you again in 2 weeks from Donington for the next rounds of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship.